Ask Reddit Storytime. Please like and subscribe. A man once told me, if you want a good story, just ask any random person if there was ever an event in their life they cannot explain. Someone almost always has one weird thing that has happened to them. So Reddit, regardless of whatever you believe about the world, do you have a story as such? I admit I had one when he asked me. Back when I was about 13 or 14, my cousin and I were walking out of a restaurant in central Washington. It was late in the evening and already dark. There was a very large river nearby us and I saw a light in the sky that appeared to follow low above it. Now there was a small airport across the river, so I gave it not another thought to being anything other than a plane. But instead of turning left to the airport, it suddenly increased in speed and appeared to shoot upwards and quickly across the town. Then it flew off to the right towards a smaller town about 10 miles away. It then stopped and hovered above it for just a few seconds before a smaller light came up from the ground, appeared to hit the first light, and then both zoomed away in the distance. I turned to my cousin and he just looked at me and asked, "Did you see that too?" To this day is it the only thing I have seen in my life I cannot explain. What about the rest of you? What is your weirdest unexplained event in life? Edit. Well, I have learned two things from this. The first was that the guy was right about a lot of people having one weird story. The other is that I really should not have tried to read all these replies before bed, because now life is terrifying. Some of you have apparently seen some scary shit. This one isn't quite supernatural, but it was weird. I live in a very homogeneous area. I know everyone on my street and almost everyone in my neighborhood. Everybody is white middle class. I had recently got a cat, who I loved, but was an idiot of an animal. One day she ran up a tree with absolutely no branches and just sat at the top. Would not come down. I live next to a contractor who had helped get her down from another tree, but said he couldn't do anything this time. The tree was too thin and, like I said, no branches until the very top. If I had to estimate, I'd say the cat was 20 to 25 feet high. I was pretty upset. I sat there waiting for her until about 2 a.m. and then I just had to go home and I passed out on the couch. At 4 a.m. I hear really loud knocking on my door. I open it to see a man fully decked out in camo gear, including light face paint. He was holding my cat. Here's the conversation we had, almost verbatim. In a thick Russian accent he asks, "Is this yours? How the hell did you get her down?" I climb. That tree had no branches. In my training I learned climb. Eat no problem. Let me pay you. Where do you even live? He shook his head and just walked away, basically while I was in mid-sentence. He looked almost concerned, but he might have just been amused. I never saw him again. I never even saw another person with a Russian accent near my neighborhood. And now my cat stays indoors. TL, Doctor, very well hidden Russian special ops are planning to invade, but before they do, one saved my cat from a tree. When I was in middle school, about 10 years ago, I was in the music room one day after school, probably for a play practice or something. It was probably cool out because I had on a kind of windbreaker jacket. Anyway, there were a few other people in the room, sitting at a table and talking and looking at someone's pet tree frog they'd brought to school for whatever reason. I was walking on the risers in the back of the room, facing the only people in there. The only things behind me were a tiny window that didn't open in any way, and an empty shelf. As I was walking towards the other people when something hit me in the back so hard it knocked me down on my knees. It was sharp, like getting shot with a BB gun or something, and a few minutes later I had my friend look at my back, and in one spot, it was swollen and bruised and bleeding and there was a gash about an inch long. This is something that still bothers me to no end. There was no hole in my jacket or my shirt or anything, even though the cut was fairly deep. I've thought about this thousands of times over the years, and I can't think of anything that could have caused that. A few years ago I was working on a construction site which was overseen by a safety representative who, as they should, took his job very seriously. One time I had to get into a very tight ceiling cavity, So I set my hard hat down beside my ladder and crawled into the roof space. I had to tidy up some cable looms which took about 10 minutes, and I came back down the ladder to find my hard hat was gone. The thing about my hard hat was that it had veiny willies drawn all over it. I was an apprentice and my co-workers were jerks. Anyways, I walked around the site looking for this hard hat when the safety rep spots me and kicks me off site for the rest of the day. I returned to work the next day with a brand new, willy-free hard hat. I spot someone in the lunchroom wearing a hard hat with large Union stickers in about the same spots where I had willies drawn all over my previous one. Knowing that I'd always written my name in text underneath the plastic insert thing which sits in the hat, I ask this guy if I can look at it, and he says fine. I remove the insert and there's my name just as I left it. The reason that this story is so baffling to me is that my full name is fairly obscure. My family is the only of one of this name in the phone book. I say to this guy, is this hard hat yours? Is your name __? He replies, it certainly is. I give him a skeptical, disappointed look and he says, don't believe me? And begins pulling out his driver's license, bank cards, etc. It turns out he actually has the exact same full name as me, and he did steal my hard hat. I started pulling the stickers off to reveal the big throbbing, glistening hard willies. He says, haha, yeah, you got me. I think this would have been even stranger for him, finding a hat with his full name written on it. Anyways, not a supernatural story, just a baffling coincidence. Me and my mom were watching TV in the living room one sunny day. I think it was about 10 years ago or so, give or take a year or two, with the large balcony sliding glass door and shades wide open. There is not a cloud in the sky and the sun is shining brightly. And then everything turns black. Pitch black. Not really cloudy and dark or nighttime dark, I mean black as in complete and utter lack of any type of light whatsoever. This includes the TV itself, no light from anywhere. Both me and my mother scream. And just as quickly as it disappeared, the light has returned. It was only gone for perhaps 2 or 3 seconds, but we both experienced this, so it wasn't like I suddenly went temporarily blind or something like that. But that isn't the only weird part. The sky is a blanket of dark clouds and it is now pouring rain. The rain only lasts for about 2 or 3 minutes and then the sky slowly begins to return to bright sunshine. Nobody else that we know experienced the darkness, but a friend of ours did notice that almost instantly, the beautiful weather turned terrible without notice. We even checked if there was an eclipse or something happening that day, but no, as far as any official news sources were concerned, no eclipses or bizarre weather happened that day. I remember when I was around 9-10 and my uncle coming down the drive and doing his usual greeting to me by throwing me up in the air and catching me again. I ran inside to tell my mom that he had arrived. When I stopped, she was crying on the phone. After she put down the phone, she turned to me and said, "Ash, your uncle has just had an accident at work and won't ever wake up again." Still to this day, I have no idea how that thought hallucination happened just moments before I learned of his death. In high school, my friends and I would sneak out of our houses and drive to the beach in the middle of the night. The beach is huge and we would run up and down it and splash in the water. One night, after about an hour of running around, the friend who drove realized he had lost the key at some point. The key wasn't on a keychain, it was just a single key and we knew we would never be able to find it and basically we were fucked. We searched up and down for an hour but we knew ultimately we would have to call one of parents to pick us up. I sat down on the beach while someone made the call and dug my hands deep, like 6 inches, into the sand and felt something. I grabbed it and pulled it out. It was the key. Seriously, divine intervention. When I was in 6th grade, my grandfather died. I was in English class, sitting in the front row and doing my classwork. All of a sudden I felt a strong kick in the gut. Whatever happened, it was forceful enough that it made me bend over my desk in pain and brought me to tears. But it went away as fast as it came, and I was just fine a moment later. Out of curiosity, I looked at the clock in the back of the room, and it was about 10:30. I went home at the end of the school day and found out that my grandfather, who I was very close to, as my grandparents raised me, had died around 10:30. I really wish I could have an explanation of what happened. When my dad was in the Navy, he was lying in his bunk and felt a kiss on his forehead. Then about 15 minutes later his CO called him in to tell him his grandpa had died. My dad only replies with "I know. He just kissed me goodbye." Ask Reddit Storytime. Please like and subscribe.